it was really special to get to be a part of it this year in the way that was like this collaborative effort with other women. Because it's easy to go into a race like that and be like, oh, well, like I know these other guys who are strong. I'll just try to stick with them. Like that was the longest I'd ever ridden with another woman in a race. And the fact that there were two of them that I was with for that long
Yeah.
was so cool. Like it was, and it's just such a different experience. I mean, even outside of bike races, like I can't even think of very many days I've spent just 9 or 10 or 11 hours continuously riding with other women.
What's going on, everybody? My name is JP, and I want to welcome you to the Stable Cyclist podcast, where we talk about bikes, life mentality, and when the occasion arises, we will dive into mental health as well. And my guest today is Kait Boyle, and this is one of many amazing guests that I have coming up over the next 2 months. Already most of them recorded, and I do not want you to miss any of them. So if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. And if you're listening on those audio platforms like Apple or Spotify, I do want to encourage you to make sure you are following along. And while you're on those audio platforms, if you could do me a huge favor and make sure you give us a 5-star rating and or review, that would be absolutely tremendous, and it's the number one way you can help the podcast grow. As I said, my guest is Kait Boyle today, and we are going to talk a lot about the ultra endurance scene, and specifically about the Marji Gesick mountain bike race, arguably one of the toughest, if not the toughest, mountain bike race in America. It is incredibly tough and rugged, and until this year, no woman had ever crossed under that 12-hour threshold to earn the illustrious belt buckle. That is until this year, when Kait and 2 other women all made it under the time limit. We're going to talk about that and so much more. To be totally honest, this is one of my favorite interviews I've gotten to have over the past 2 years. Kait is extremely transparent and vulnerable throughout the interview, and open about her amazing career. One more thing before we get Kait in here, I want to remind you that the Stable Cyclist podcast is brought to you by Flow Formulas. If you have a big event coming up or just want to train to be healthy, Flow Formulas in your bottles is what you are needing. You can use the code JohnPeter15 at checkout to get a discount on whatever you have in your cart. Like I said, this is a tremendous conversation. Let's get Kait Boyle into the studio. Well, Kait Boyle, welcome to the Stable Cyclist podcast. This has been an adventure to get connected with each other, but a good one. And I'm really excited you're here and to chat with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm grateful that generally my bikes work better than my computer does.
It's all good. It's all good. You you came I think if you're in the ultra world, like I am somewhat connected to, you're a familiar name for quite a while, but you came screaming onto everyone's radar when the Marji Gesick happened this past year. And we're going to talk all about what you and Syd Schultz and Kristy McBride did that day. But we always just start off like basic, like how do we get into biking? And I know your path is a little different and a little later maybe than things happen for a lot of people. So tell us about that early part of your journey.
Yeah, so I grew up running and riding horses mostly, and skiing. And then in college, decided to pursue a career in adventure education. Um, just really drawn to the backcountry and wilderness and expeditionary travel. And so I worked in outdoor ed for 12 plus years, full time through my 20s. And it wasn't until my mid 20s that I really found the bike, and that came through a rock climbing accident. I fell and dislocated and broke my ankle, as a lot of climbers do. You know, it's a pretty
Sure.
common climbing injury. And as a lot of people who end up having ankle surgery or any kind of sports injury, recovery process often go through, that one of the first things I could do is ride a bike, because it's pretty low impact, and as soon as you can kind of like be at a low risk for falling, then you're kind of unlimited. And so I found myself able to ride a lot earlier than I could return to climbing or running. And I pretty quickly realized that it was such an amazing way to explore a landscape, because you go at a pace where you can see a landscape change, but it's slow enough and under your own power where you really feel it and you can really appreciate it. And so I quickly found myself wondering, like, well, if I brought my overnight stuff, how far could I go? And so after about a year of mountain biking, I rode the Great Divide mountain bike route on my single speed from Mexico to Canada. Yeah, it was a 26-inch steel single speed also, with
Fantastic.
V brakes. That was like my
Wow.
intro to biking. That was about
Awesome.
2012.
Yep.
Yeah, and I did that, rode it in a month during around summer solstice time. So long days, plenty of daylight. My main goal is I wanted to ride all day, but I wanted to see the whole thing, so I didn't want to ride at night.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what I did, and that kind of launched this whole trajectory that ultimately ended up changing my life and my career, and started bikepacking kind of around the world, and that led to sponsorship and then racing.
Sure.
And so yeah, it was a really kind of side way into bike racing. But I think the thing that has I'm really grateful for is it was really founded, and the racing and the bike riding was really founded in a passion for like um moving through a landscape under my own power
Yeah.
and being curious to see what's possible for me. And that's been like the driving question from day one all the way through to like going to Margie and being like, well, I don't know what's possible.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned just an appreciation of going through a landscape. I want to back up and talk more about that outdoor ed piece. What
hmm
is what does that mean when you were involved in that? Because I feel like a lot of the things I've heard you say even recently and the passions off the bike that you are putting your energy behind today still all lend back to that idea of being outdoors, appreciating where you are. So what does when you said I was involved in outdoor ed for a while, what does that look like? What were you doing?
That's a great question. So depending on where it's being taught, outdoor ed is very much based on the belief that like in the backcountry, in the wilderness, so like in these wild places, where there's inherently a lot of uncertainty, we often have goals like climbing a mountain or um, running down a river or traveling a route, that through working through the uncertainty and the challenges and the adversity that comes with that, that's inherent in places that we can't control, that we develop great leadership skills, character is developed, and through that, with the people you're with, you develop incredible interpersonal connections and
Yes.
experiences
Yes.
and intrapersonal.
Yep.
Um, and you really learn, like not only what you're made of, but the kind of person you can be, when you choose to rise to the challenge and develop all the tools in your toolbox to be able to do so. And so that's really what I was teaching, which was a kind of an incredible gift, because by teaching something, you really have to relearn it over and over
Yeah.
again yourself,
Yes. Yes.
And so I think that start in adventure education really gave me a lot of tools that I've applied to ultra racing.
Where were you like forgive me, you also the listeners. I'm an educator, so I'm just
hmm
like always curious about these like kind of things.
Yeah.
Where were you doing this? Like within high school or in a college setting, or what did this look like?
Yeah, so for me, it started with Outward Bound. I was working for an Outward Bound school in Oregon. And so the classrooms were the Deschutes River, Smith Rocks, and the Central Cascades. And then I went to Prescott College and got a degree in this, and then was working for Knowles, the National Leadership School.
Yeah. Yeah.
Their classrooms are all over the world. I worked for Knowles in the American West, the Salmon River, in various mountain ranges across the West, the Tetons. and skis. And then with Prescott College, I started teaching in their program, first as an adjunct and then as associate faculty. And they have a really cool and unique school structure where that's very set up for field-based education, where at the time it would be a block course for 1 month and then a 9 week semester. And so field courses could be a month long and we could go anywhere. And
Sure.
we were often coming up to Idaho, going to California, spending a ton of time in Colorado and Utah and all over Arizona. Um, and then the 9 week semesters for adventure education courses could be in the field as well. We would just leave Prescott. And so that um those courses for Outward Bound, they're often younger, like teenage students, but then with Prescott and Knowles, I was mostly working with college age students.
Okay.
So people in like very formative years.
Sure. Yeah. Uh, you said you have this accident, you start biking a lot. You were obviously very passionate about the education piece and teaching. As you started to like have success on the bike and have sponsor opportunities and those things come up, at what point were you like, I think I have a problem here that I might need to like pivot from what I'm doing, no pun intended to your sponsor, but pivot from what
Mhm.
I'm doing over to this other thing that's here for me?
Yeah, that's a another great question. Um, it kind of came as often things do, like at a pinpoint where I was teaching full time, which at Prescott College, which looked like 7 field courses a year, and working for Knowles in the summer, and racing at an elite level at that point. It was um I had established myself in the ultra racing world at that point, and I was in a master's program. Um, and was trying to finish that. And so, and around then, I was around 29 or 30 years old. And so I think, like many people who, are approaching a different decade, I was like, well, I've lived in Prescott and I've worked here for my entire adult life. Like, I'm kind of a weird young adult who's had a full-time, like one job their whole life so far. And and that was where my community was. It was really all I'd known. And I just had this curiosity of like, could I be a professional athlete? Like, could I make a living doing this? And not only that, but could I do it in a way that like actually has a positive impact on like the landscapes that I cherish so much and the community? And
Sure.
so I was really curious if that was possible and what even that would look like. Like at that point, like Jay Peterberry was a full-time ultra racer. Lael was just getting started. Hurt, what my best friend and teammate now, wasn't being paid. He was also working full time at Prescott College. And so there just weren't many examples of other people doing that.
Yeah.
And then the other piece was like, I just had been working in the field for so long, and was just curious about like actually physically moving and calling a different place home. Like, I love Central Arizona, and really my heart is the happiest in the mountains, and I also love winter. And so I just wanted to just try mo living somewhere differently before I was like really deeply, even more rooted
Yeah.
in Central Arizona. So that all kind of led to it. And the nice thing about adventure education is a lot of it is very contract based. And so it is very easy to have part-time work or like kind of schedule your work in different times of the year. And so I just had this vision where I was like, well, I'll just um, move to the Tetons and I'll work in the field for Knowles or Prescott in the winter and then be able to have more time in the summer. And so I just had a idea of like what supplementing my income would work because
Sure.
some people I think can go from 0 to 100 and have a full time paid career as an athlete, especially maybe if they're starting younger. But for me, it was very much like a progression of what sponsorship looked like. And it took
Yeah.
years to
Yeah.
having like a full-time salary.
Yeah. Was at any point in that arc, did you just be a bike racer full time, or was there always like some hand still in the outdoor ed stuff because you just are so passionate about it?
I did end up, well, kind of both and. COVID changed things
Yeah, of
as
course.
it does, and
Yeah.
so, well, and then and I was also in a huge car accident. And so
Yeah.
those two things happened very closely. So at the end of 2018, 2 months after winning the 24-hour world championship, I was in a car accident where I didn't know if I'd walk away from it,
Yeah.
ever. And amazingly, I had that opportunity. I had a full recovery. But that very much, and that coincided with this year where I was like, well, I'm gonna go for the pro athlete thing. And so kind of it was really, I felt really vulnerable at the time. And in
Yeah.
hindsight, it was such a gift to be taking that leap and then have bike racing taken away from me
Hmm.
for the year of 2019, because I was recovering. And
Yeah.
so I was able to kind of do some non-racing related, but like in the industry type work, like working for Bike Gang Roots a little bit, did a little bit of coaching. I worked a Knowles course that year, and then I was in the field with Knowles when COVID was starting, and I was one of the last horses in the world to get pulled out of the field. Um, and then, as we all know, everything shut down, and so outdoor ed came to a grinding halt. Bike racing came to a grinding halt. And for me, and the other thing that comes out of a career in outdoor education is being able to live off of a pretty small income, like being
Yeah.
pretty creative and frugal in that way. And so
Yeah.
I was able to just like figure it out, and it ultimately gave me more time to like really fully recover. And I went and time trialed the Coca-Cola Trail and set an FKT on that. And that was kind of my first like big return to
Yeah.
racing. And then from there, that was just this like re-up into um being able to do more as an athlete. But I think that like at this point, and from the beginning and still to today, like my job has been one part kind of on the bike and then one part off the bike. And it
Yeah.
has changed the ratio, and what the off the bike and the on the bike has looked like has changed over the years. But I've always sought ways to, for both my income, but then also like my mission to be very connected to like doing things that are either education based or advocacy based or
Yeah.
um, even storytelling in a way to just like keep that motivation high for like why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Right. Yeah. Well, I hear you in there. There's a lot about identity. And I'm part of the reason that for quite a while, even before Margie, I was kind of fascinated by your story is there's so many points where identity really gets challenged uh,
Mhm.
in what you've been talking about. And obviously I want to dig into the accident because I think there's a lot in
Mhm.
there as well. But like you seem to have an idea of kind of like your North Star, this like where you ground yourself. And it's not just bike racing and it's not just the
Mhm.
bike. And the bike, like you said, is kind of a and piece to it.
Mhm.
But yeah, and maybe it is right now that we talk about this accident that you had. I think I also relate to this because in 23 I had a real horrific one, and it was a head injury that took me about a year and a half to get over. And so a lot of the things I've heard you say, I'm like, I can relate to those feelings and
Mhm.
those thoughts. And so, but all of this and so much of your story, I feel, just points to like having an identity beyond just the bike, which I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of, especially men my age that I talk to, I'm like, there's more to life than just our bike. Like the bike is a great
Mhm.
tool, but it's not everything. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, like let's shift to the accident because I think you lend a lot more to this part of the story with that.
Yeah, that sounds great. I can definitely relate to the identity piece. I'm happy to
Y-
elaborate on that.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about what happened. You just like you said, you just won a world championship in 24 hours. Where
Hmm.
had that occurred?
Yeah, so that was in Scotland, one of the
Okay.
last weekends in October of that year.
Yeah.
And in the even kind of bigger, zooming out a tiny bit, like that year was the year that I'd really just like everything was starting to click. I was like, okay,
Of course.
I
Of
figured
course.
out ultra racing,
Yeah.
and I had like set a course record at 24 hours of Old Pueblo. I had set a record on the Arizona Trail 300, which at the time was the fourth fastest time by anyone ever. It was only
Yeah.
3 hours slower than the three fastest men. And then went to 24-hour Worlds in October and won that. And the and so of course I came home from Scotland and was like, this I am on a roll. I know exactly what I'm doing next year. And that is and I was convinced I was going to set an overall record on the Colorado Trail Race.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and was fully dedicated to whatever it would take to be ready for that. And then I was in this car accident. Like it was 1 week into starting to rebuild after some downtime and on Christmas Eve. And yeah, I couldn't feel my legs when my car came to a stop. I never lost consciousness. So I am really lucky in that. I do think the head injuries are one of those like invisible injuries that are
Yeah.
really scary and
Yep.
harder to recover from than musculoskeletal injuries. So, um, I really am very, very grateful for having missed that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was in the ICU and had ruptured my bladder and broke my pelvis in four places. Like if you think of the pelvic ring, it just broke in the way that a donut would.
Yeah.
That was how the surgeon described it. Also broke my sacrum and my fibula, which was really minor in the grand scheme of things.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and so I learned on Christmas Day that I'd have an opportunity for a full recovery. And in that moment, when my surgeon said that, I was like, so I can race 24-hour races again? And he looked at me and he's like, yeah, I don't see why not. And like, I don't know that he really even fully understood what that meant.
Right.
And
Yeah.
but what it gave me in the moment was just this belief that
Sure.
like I could recover from this and be able to resume doing what I love to do and what I really wanted to be able to do. And was my identity at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but I think that what ultimately panned out over the following like 4 or 5 years was just learning first in those first few months and then continuing to relearn as I continued to try to race ultras and then have to step back and then try to again. And then ultimately I retired from racing ultras in 2022 after trying to race 24-hour world championships again and ending up 12 or 13 hours into the race while winning and unable to walk. And my PT was there and she's like, Mia, you need to stop. This is like risking your body and your longevity, not as a professional athlete, but just as a
Yeah.
athlete. And
Yeah.
so that journey over those years just really continued to push me to kind of come to terms with what is my North Star? Like, why? What is my why ultimately? And how can I have that regardless of if it involves racing or being the best at something or be finding my potential on the bike or if
Yeah.
it doesn't even involve the bike. And so and that is what has been such a gift through all of this, because whether it's a car accident or it's COVID or it's getting a cold or it's building a house or like being like getting married and supporting your partner, like there's so many things in life that transcend just the pursuit of one
Yeah.
goal
Yes.
or like one way of doing something. And the this pursuit of trying to return to doing something that I do love, but was also very driven by like that desire to see what's possible for me. Like it's continued to make me just have a sense of self that is beyond the bike and even beyond movement in a way.
Yeah.
And and the car accident has also given me an incredible gratitude for what it means to be able to be able-bodied and to be able to move in the
Yeah.
places that I love.
Yeah.
And that was ultimately like in the car that night while I was waiting for the jaws of life. I was like, well, one, I've had more experiences moving in the most incredible places in the world than most people ever do in their whole life. And at that point, I was just
Yeah.
30 or 31.
Yeah.
And so if that's it, that's okay. I think I still have been winning. And then two, if I do get to do this again, I just want to make sure that I make the most of it and by being committed to just like having full and present experiences myself, and then also being committed to ensuring that the people who come after me have those opportunities that I've had,
Yeah.
and these places that have really shaped my life and who I am are have a voice.
Yeah. 100%. That that rehab and rebuild of your life essentially after the accident, though you have a quote that I have pinned to my wall, and it
Oh, I
says
love that.
it says recovery doesn't mean going back to the way you were. It means
Mhm.
finding the new normal and a new you. It's not good to
Mhm.
define the new based on the old version. And for
Yeah.
me personally, that struck so much because uh, in 2020, I got diagnosed with bipolar and I had to like relearn life completely. And that
Mhm.
was a realization I had to come to. And it probably took me 2 years to find that realization. And
Mhm.
so that quote like just resonates heavily with me. But you're sharing about like, I am trying to rebuild my body back into this professional athlete. And at some point, you said in a 24-hour race, your PT's like, yo, you can't do this. And
Mhm.
how you've gone through this rebuild in the process into this new version of you. It's not, you're never, I tell people, I'm
Mhm.
never going to be the guy I used to be. Like I'm
Yeah,
always that he's gone. And so
totally.
you've rebuilt yourself and you get to this point again where like the last time I was really doing this before the accident, I'm the world champion of this. And
Mhm.
now I'm going to have to be okay saying we're going to stop and find something else. What was,
Mhm.
tell me more about that specific moment and like your internal of getting to the point where you're like, yeah, they're right. I have to be done with this in this way.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that it was, well, it was really hard in the moment and also embarrassing, because
Of
like I was
course.
in
Yeah.
Italy, it was
Yeah.
on the other side of the world. My
Yeah.
husband was there. Like I had probably what the biggest crew of anyone there. Like my husband was there, two of my best friends were there, my PT was there. Like, um, and so, and of course, like the dream and what everyone is there to support is like this epic comeback,
Yeah.
right? Where you're like, and now she's world champion again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then instead, I like
Was
it
there a
wasn't
film crew
just
with you?
no, there wasn't, thank
Okay.
goodness.
Okay.
So, no, I have flopped on with a film crew as well.
Okay. Well, it
We
happens.
can talk about that one too.
Yeah.
That was Unbound this year. But the and like I knew Kelly was right because like it's not rocket science to know that if you can't stand on one of your legs because of shooting pain from your back all the way down the leg, that like
Yes.
everything's okay. Like
Yeah.
that's not,
Yes.
and that's not a place to be riding a bike, let alone trying to have like a peak performance.
Yeah.
And I think while it was also very disappointing, I was so lucky to be surrounded by these people who
Hmm.
love me
Hmm.
and like to go to the beach the next day and be like, okay, I'm okay. I'm not injured and I'm
Yeah.
going to recover from this. That's the first win,
Yeah.
because like I've already wondered if I'd recover from something. And the last thing I need to do is to put myself in a place where I'm compromising all that.
Yeah.
And not just like my own work, but like what so many people have given to make it possible
Yeah.
for me to have that.
Yeah.
And then the other part was like, sorry,
No, you're
I,
good.
my husband just said something, Will, like that day, I think, yeah, it must have been the next day because I stopped racing at 1 a.m. Like, I just want to be able to go skiing together when we're like in our 70s.
Yeah.
And that just means like I want that more than anything too.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
And so that has been like a guiding that concept of like me and Will be able to ski 30 something years from now is has been this guiding like marker since then of like,
Sure.
is what I'm doing still sustainable? Because ultimately, like, no bike race is worth like compromising that
Yeah.
or giving that possibility up.
Yeah.
And so that has been really, really helpful in just having this like identity or just kind of value or
Yeah.
goal and vision in my life that's like beyond what I'm trying to do personally on a bicycle
Yeah.
or even as an athlete. And so, and then the amazing thing is that also has helped me from like a career perspective really be grounded in the realization that like there are so many things you can do on a bike or like powered by your own body that aren't ultras.
Yes.
Like it turns out most people who ride bikes aren't racing or riding ultras. And so that gave me this freedom to tell my sponsors and my community that like I'm done racing ultras, but I there's a lot I can do that's less than 12 hours,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm gonna do. And so I spent a couple of years um racing stage races, still going bike packing, racing just like marathon and shorter distance races, and I had a great time and loved it. And it also gave me the opportunity to like kind of just stop pushing in the way that I felt like I needed to, which
Yeah.
was very much informed by like what had worked in the past
Sure.
and find a way to be without injury, and to just have a healthy body for years in a row, which although what was crazy about it, and I think that this is I like to include this in my story because it helps people who are recovering from injuries remember that like they aren't linear and like once
Yeah.
you're like recovered by the doctor's standards, like is it's not as black and white as that. And so while I was technically recovered like 6 months after the car accident or a year after the car accident, like it really was this wave where I was having to relearn like what worked for me and then what didn't work for me, and that changes over time. And so this like retiring from ultras and then pursuing just like doing riding my mountain bike in different ways gave me the space to stop trying to like put a square peg in a round hole,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and actually let go of the expectation of how it should look and let what my reality then really was guide what I was doing.
Yeah.
And that's what ultimately then led me to being where I am today, where I obviously at some point unretired from racing ultras. um, which was only made possible by giving my body the time to like
Yeah.
be healthy and not try to force it to do something that it wasn't ready to do.
Yeah. No, 100%. I I'm involved in a pretty big documentary project called Back to the Start, and it's about me getting back to the starting line of the Mater 100.
Cool.
And it took me 6 years or 7 years after the bipolar diagnosis and then the accident. And I just tell people, I'm like, I just needed time, like a lot of
Yeah,
time. And I needed to
totally.
kind of go through the progression of like, okay, let's race XCO because we can do that. And then we can
Hmm.
maybe race some longer gravel. And then finally realizing, like, no, I can race a 100-mile mountain bike race again.
Yeah,
But I couldn't have done it 2 years ago for sure. And I maybe
right.
couldn't do it last year. But now this year I finally could. And there's just, my sister's a doctor and she always says, you just need time. People just need time. And we, as
Yeah.
Americans, we don't like to take it. But we just need time to recover, and our bodies usually will heal their way out,
Hmm.
unless there's a major brain injury or something. But usually we can
Right.
just, we'll get it back. So let's kind of pick up. We were talking through moving into the shorter stuff. One question
Mhm.
I have is, what do you define as an ultra?
That's a great question. I think of ultras as kind of like around the like one full day or longer.
Okay,
And I think that the definition varies so much. Like some people think that ultras are 24 hours or longer. Some people think ultras are anything longer than 100 miles.
sure.
Which like, but then you're like, well, 100 miles can be such a huge range in time.
Yes.
So I've just kind of always thought of it as in that like 12 plus hour range
Yeah,
because there are so many like Kokapelli was always kind of considered obviously a shorter ultra, but like an ultra, and then anything, I mean, that takes like 16 or 18 hours, like those seem like they should be ultras, and they don't fall into any other category. Like
yeah, yeah,
I think sub 12 hours, you start to get to be able to be like, oh, well, there's like the 100 milers and there's marathon. And yeah, I think trail running does a much better job at defining distances
yes.
than
Well,
we
like
do. But
like you said, 100 miler in mountain biking. What does that mean? Like,
totally. Yeah, I mean,
because
it
you
could be
could,
5 hours, could be 20.
yes, exactly. So
One thing for me with ultras versus other distances, and part of that definition is the way that I would race a, really like 10 plus hours is really different than how I would race under that distance, like
sure,
from a pacing and fueling
sure.
standpoint. So
So
that is
yeah,
one distinction for
so
me.
let's talk about pacing.
Yeah.
Uh, I There was a time in my life where the idea of getting off and walking at any point on a
Mm.
steep climb seemed like the most ridiculous thought ever.
Yeah, you're not alone.
And and even if it was like I'm gonna crank 900 watts to get up this
Mhm.
thing,
Mhm.
now if we're doing something over 8 hours and it really points upwards, I'm gonna get off and walk. Like there's no
Mhm.
question. And
Mhm.
so what does pacing look like? You said 10 hours is kind of your line in the sand. What does it look like for the longer stuff versus the shorter stuff, and how would you do that differently?
Yeah, I think for me that I have learned um through a lot of trial and error, just like what is a sustainable pace? I'm gonna have how many matches I have.
Yeah.
And like any time that any of us are climbing above that like threshold line, we are tapping into a different energy system
Yeah.
that is not going to be uh replenishing as quickly.
Yes.
And thus there are only so much of that you can do and hope to come like recover from during an ultra. And so and that like amount depends hugely by individuals and your own fitness and external factors like altitude or sea level, whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, it's a sensation. Like when I'm racing an ultra, like I don't ever want to feel like I'm trying hard,
Yeah.
especially in the first half. In the second half, regardless of if it's 12 hours or 3 days, like after that halfway point, you can start to be like, okay, now I'm trying. And inevitably, like you're not going any faster once you start
Yeah.
trying. It's
Yeah.
just that you have paced yourself so that maybe you can maintain the same pace. It's just a lot harder to do
Yes.
so. Um, and that was one of the really fun things about Margie was that like me and Sid and Julie went into it together and it was like, wow, like how do we ride a mountain bike ultra together and like have different paces? And
Yeah.
I think we ultimately worked together a lot and really supported each other a lot with pacing. But that was one of my fears going into it was that I was very uh primed for racing at high altitude at a much lower power and then was going to sea level with like the shortest, steepest, most painful climbs anywhere.
Yes.
And was worried that I wouldn't have the top end to keep up for those initial efforts in the first few hours that were also needed by the nature of that race.
Yeah.
So, which that's a bit of a tangent, but yeah, I think really like my general rule of thumb and advice I give people is like really the first half should feel easy. Like it just shouldn't feel like you're working that hard.
Yeah.
And it's so counterintuitive, and especially when you have mass starts and you're surrounded by people going hard, and you feel good. Because like in theory, racing shouldn't feel easy, but
Right.
I think I've never found myself feeling like the second half of an ultra is easy. Um, even when I've nailed my pacing. So it's
Yeah.
just that like ultimate patience and like being like, okay, this is my pace and I know it's gonna get harder and like I would rather personally have more to give in the second half than to be suffering through it.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
I've
And a
done,
funny, yeah.
yeah, I've done both experiences that you just described, and I for sure will always chase the like, we're just going to be steady here and enjoy this
Totally.
and still be pretty
Yeah.
fast.
And like ultras are a mental game. Like they
Yeah.
are, I mean, you could say more mental than physical, and you can really impact your mental game by blowing up.
Yes.
And you can also really impact your mental game by feeling amazing in the second half and catching people. And so if you
Yes.
actually like
Yes.
can have totally like if you can have the self-control to let people ride away from you, you're
Yeah.
like, well, I'm going to catch them. And then once you start to do that, you feel like you get this mental boost, which is amazing because you feel like you're going faster than the people around you. And like that's such gives you so much more to work with than the feeling of being demoralized by just getting dropped or
Yeah.
blowing up or all that. So
Yeah. When you can hit the aid station quickly versus looking
yeah.
at the people in chairs that look like they're in like the
Uh-huh.
infirmary, it's like, okay, let's keep going, guys. So
Totally.
yeah, you mentioned a little bit about Margie, and I have down here like one of the things I wrote down. I'm like collaboration and how did that look? But I want to back up a little bit and where does the allure? We talked a little bit in a part that is technically like off camera, so people won't hear. But we talked about my allure with the Maadahe Trail, and
Mhm.
I continually have been out there. I've been out there to film. I've been out there to race. When does that allure for you start with Margie?
Um, it started, the intrigue first started in, I think 2017. It was 2017. Danny Hill emailed me or Facebook messaged me and was like, hey, you should come do this. And we had met racing on the Arizona Trail. And at that point, Margie was pretty young. And he was like, yeah, we needed like a woman to come do this in under 12 hours. Like, that's right up your alley. And I was like, oh, cool. And at that point, I hadn't raced in other parts of the country as much, like
Yeah,
outside of the Southwest and West. And so the first kind of allure piece was like, oh, I wonder what that's like. Like,
yeah,
I grew up in the Northeast, so like different than the like UP, but similar in the like rolling hills, hardwood forests, a lot of water, that sort of thing. And so I think I've always wanted to be able to be a pretty diverse athlete. And so the allure was trying to see if I could do something like that on like kind of foreign to me terrain, from a biking perspective. And just like also being really intrigued by the challenge of like a woman hasn't done this. And
yeah,
like
yeah,
the first thing that inspired me to race an ultra or race at all really was I had been bike packing with Kurt Refsnyder for years at that point, and I was like, wow, I mean, he's obviously stronger than me from a physiological perspective, but on these like month-long trips, like our skill sets and strengths kind of even out.
yeah,
And he at that point had had a lot of success, like had won the Tour Divide and Arizona Trail numerous times. And so I was like, well, if he can do that, like I wonder what I can do
yeah,
on that race. And so that like, and then through 2017 and 2018, especially with those results in 2018, I was like, wow, like women can race with the fastest men in ultras. Like it does level the playing field from the like physiological differences in a
yes,
lot of ways.
yes,
And so with Margie, I was really drawn to that challenge of like, if the men are doing this, like I really think we can too.
yeah,
And so, yeah, that was the draw. And that remained the draw.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you get drawn to a race, and I now have seen this happen repeatedly at the Maadahe, where people see like a record time or they see a belt buckle or a standard, and it's a 100-mile race, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go take a crack at this." and not understanding maybe, and maybe you did understand how big of a bite you were taking to go do
Mhm.
this, but I've watched it happen a lot with the Madahe where people come in and they just don't understand how difficult this is, what you're going to do. So what was your
Yeah.
first experience actually doing it like versus your perception going in?
Hmm. I think that, well, so I went out with Kurt in 2021 to try to tackle the Madahe or the not the Madahe, Marji Gesick
Yeah.
the first time. And I think I had pretty, I don't remember exactly what the year had looked like, but I had pretty good fitness. Like I had done the Madahe that spring in
Yeah.
a like um 16-ish hour. Like I'd slept, but it was more of a nap.
Yeah.
So like a solid effort.
Yep, for sure.
And the and I think that the people listening who are maybe more from the central part or the eastern part of the country will appreciate this. I think I definitely went in with this mindset of like, oh, I'm like racing. I live in the West. I live at altitude. Like I have had these good results this year, like going out to the lower elevations and like less elevation, bit shorter climbs, like that'll be no big deal. Like no problem.
Yeah.
Um, it's like people like to, like kind of pump up like what being like acclimatized to
Yes.
altitude does for
Yes.
you. Um, but so I went out there and I crashed pre-riding and like separated a rib, which I was already there. So, and like rib injuries suck, but they're also like, you're not going to make them worse,
Right.
if you continue to use them. And so I started. And I got about halfway on that day and was both like in excruciating pain with my rib and being like, okay, this is a very physical course. Like it is not one that you can just kind of sit still
Yeah.
and like breathe in a controlled way. Like
Yeah.
maybe not the best place to nurse a rib injury long, but I was also surprised by how like, yeah, like how physical the riding was
Yeah.
specifically, not just like how taxing the punchy climbs are. Like I knew that would be that way, but especially how like those descents are so technical, but also so short. They like you really don't get very much time to recover.
Right.
And so I got a really good eye into like what sort of fitness you would need going into it. And that is very different than like climbing for a couple hours and descending for a
Yes.
half an hour.
Yes.
Um, and I remember coming home and being like, okay, I want to go back and like I do want to train for the that nature of that race. Which ultimately is like being able to be on the gas more steadily for that entire time
Yeah.
while ha your power being able to spike in the way that like the ultra brain is like kind of calibrated to not.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
So so you get to this year. Did
Mhm.
you and Syd and Kristy know ahead of time, like, hey, we're gonna go all go at this together, or did you kind of find your names on Bike Reg and be like, oh, they're fast? Like, what? How was this kind of put together, or was it put together quite loosely and it just worked?
So since 2021, I've had Margie in the back of my mind of being like, I want to go back, have another try at this. That in my was not going to be this year for me. I was targeting the Colorado Trail Race, which was in August, and then the Vapor Trail Race, which is like a mini Colorado Trail Race,
Yep.
which was then in September. And based on what I knew of Margie, I didn't think that I had the ability to be racing at like 10 to 12,000 feet for mo August and September, and then go to sea level and have the top end that I would need to race well at Margie.
Sure.
But in the winter, this winter, Syd messaged me and she was like, hey, I'm doing Margie. Like she'd done it last year. She was like, I want to go back. I want to see someone, like, I want to see a woman go in under 12 hours. And she's like, and I think you can do it. Like, and I would love, and I think that this can happen if we work together. And I was first, like I had raced with Syd in other races, and that was the extent that I had known her. And like I'd always enjoyed riding with her, and like always got a kick out of when I'd hear the GoPro turn on behind me, like, oh, my butt's on camera again. And she's awesome and and I know that she's a very skilled rider.
Yeah,
Um, and so, but I was in that moment, I was like, wow, like what an amazing character of someone to like reach out and be like, I want to see this happen, and like I'm psyched to help, and like I think you can do it.
yeah,
And that was the first thing that the concept of working together in that race, I still didn't quite know what that would look like, but
sure.
her like commitment to the collaboration
Yeah,
and it being not just about her result made me suddenly like really curious about like being a part of it, and not just for my result, but from that like we want to see this happen.
yeah,
And so, and she had said that Kristy, that she had raced with Kristy through a part of the second half of the course last year, and just realized like how big of a difference it made to like be riding with someone who knows the trails. Um, and from just like the mental element, that was the other thing, was my first year I got lost multiple times
yeah,
and was just like so overwhelmed by navigating by the red arrows and how tight and twisty the GPX file is, like very different than what I'm used to.
yes,
And so then so Syd referenced that too, of just like being able to work together navigating. And so I was really curious, and I was just unsure if I could pull it off. And so then, as soon as the Colorado Tour race, I scratched the first day that there was a forest fire and we rode through a plume spot. My AQI was like 200. And I called it, which was a tough decision in the moment and immediately the right decision for me
yeah,
as soon as I was over the disappointment of it. But as soon
yeah,
as I got home, I reached out to Todd, the race director, to beg him to let me come, and because I was like, I know what I can do. Like I have some fitness and I'm not going to be recovering for 3 weeks now. I'm also not going to have pneumonia from racing through wildfire
yes,
and I'm going to race Margie.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and so I just crammed in a little bit of higher intensity training. I did like a gravel stage race as well. So I think it was actually, there's some good physiological crossover with like the surginess of
yep,
racing in a pack, and then raced Vapor Trail in Colorado, and then tried to recover as well as I could for 2 weeks. And in that time, Julie Momber, also who had also raced last year with them, committed to going. Um, and so there was, and we started all texting. I think basically like as soon as I texted Syd, it might have even been the same day I texted Syd, I was like, I'm in. I'm buying plane tickets. And then the next thing I knew, Kristy had started a group text with the four of us, and she had like started with a, I'm so psyched we're doing this. And then it was like every single piece of beta and like all of her aid station strategies and like everything that you don't know
yeah,
before you go and do it. And that
yeah,
was one thing that it also I had thrown me the first time, was just I had no idea how aid worked, and like I didn't have a crew. And for those who don't know, like there aren't really official aid stations. There's a place you can have a drop bag twice, but then there's pop-up aid everywhere, and you can have crew technically anywhere.
sure.
And so
That's
yeah. And
Wild
so we
West. Got it.
basically, yeah, totally. And it makes a difference. And so we
Yeah,
basically were like, okay, we're gonna coordinate all of our cruise spots. Like I got my mom amazingly agreed to fly out and crew for me. Syd's parents and husband were there for her. Julie's mom was there for her. Kristy's husband and family was crewing for her. And so we all coordinated where they would be. We shared splits, did some pre-riding together. Kristy shared like basically everything she knows about Margie with us. So yeah.
awesome. So you talked a little bit about this earlier, but having a plan to ride together at a place like this and then actually doing it, those are two very different things. And
Hmm.
so, what was that experience like? And was there, I'm always curious, like when you have these agreements, is there like a line in the sand mile wise where you're like, well, if we get here and we're still together, it's over. Like we're
Right.
gonna race. Like how did that all play out?
Yeah. that I didn't know the answer to that until the day of. Um, and I should add that in the week before, Kristy had crashed and injured her right thumb, which you need to shift if you're shifting.
Yes.
And so she had pivoted from riding her geared bike to her single speed, which
Oh,
having started racing on the single speed, I was like, what?
that
You're doing what? And she was also like, yeah, it's fine. And I actually think I'm faster in the second half of the course in Rambo on my single speed. I just won't be able to keep up with you all at the beginning. And so, and she was like, but if we happen to regroup, then I'll be excited to lead you all through Rambo because like she knows those trails. That's the most technical, hardest to navigate, has the most like blind horizon lines. Um, and so yeah, unfortunately our plan for all of us starting together didn't pan out, but we were hopeful that Kristy would have an amazing ride on her own and possibly catch us in the
yeah.
second half.
Yeah.
In the first half is just flatter. There's more kind of shorter bike paths, ski trail connections where like you can be in your high gears and kind of
Yeah.
motoring along. Um, and so at the beginning, it started with me and Kristy or me and Julie and Syd to start on the start line together and starting the run and just like in a little pack. And my strategy was like, I'm just gonna stay behind Syd. She's taller than I am. I'm like won't get run over. And I knew that they'd both been racing shorter distances and would probably be more inclined to start faster than I would be.
Sure.
And had just raced the year before. And so they more had fresher memory of like what the start of that race would feel like and what sort of effort would be needed to have good positioning. Because there's also 500 people starting this race, and a lot of people can start a 100-mile race really fast. Um, and so they set the pace from the beginning, and I just kind of followed their wheels and hoped that like with that high, I mean, it felt like a cross country start pace to me. I was like, well, I just hope that I can hang on because like if I can
Sure.
hang on, I think I'll be okay, but I might get popped off this in the first 3 hours. Um, and early on, so first Syd crashed and I was right behind her and I stopped and just I was like committed to making sure she got back on her bike.
Yeah.
And she's clearly okay, but that was like my first moment where I was like, okay, we are working together. Like I'm fully invested not only in her being okay, which I would do for anyone, but like also like making sure she has everything. Like we're going and I could see Julie looking back and the guys around us communicating to Julie, who was ahead of us, that this had happened. And so then they were all slowing down and waiting for us. There had also been a moment where I got a stick in my derailleur and we were like in a group with some guys on a really fast ski trail section. And I just get off my bike and pull it off and get my chain back on my bike. And it was felt like forever. It was probably not very long. But as I got that sorted and got back on, I could see them looking back and everyone in the group, the men included, sitting up and slowing down and waiting for me to come back on. And so there were just instances like that early on where it's like, oh, this is like playing out differently than if we were racing each other.
Mm.
Um, like people are looking out for each other.
Yeah.
And then we're at the beginning just mostly just trying to stay together because there are a lot of other people around. Um, and then at some point, around 2.5 hours in, I looked at my splits and I was like, and at that point, I was like, hey, y'all, like, we're doing great. This is a great pace, and we should not go any faster.
Mm.
And so that was me like verbalizing my pacing and experienced around pacing for an ultra
Yep.
in a way that like I just never would, like if we're like not in it together. Cause like, yeah, I think I don't maybe other people do, but I just don't think that you normally like provide advice or like your own
Yeah.
pacing strategy,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was just like, hey, like let's tone it down a little. Like we're doing great. We're ahead of my splits. Like we really can just then at that point I moved to the front and I just like intentionally slowed us down a little. which I've now learned was a little stressful for them. Because like
Sure.
it was at a point like only 2.5 hours in, like I'm sure we could have kept going hard for a long time.
Yeah.
But I was just like, well, I think like I can just feel that this is right and this is a sustainable pace. And so did that for a while. And then we got up to the top of a climb. And then Sid was like, hey, do you all know like this descent? Like, did you get to pre-ride this? And I hadn't. And I don't think Julie had either. And she was like, oh, cool, I'll lead. And so she pulled in. And so she led us down. It's probably like one of the most technical descents on and longer ones too on
Yeah.
that course. And so she was just like, I'll lead this. And like we followed her line through the whole thing. And then we had a long section of ski trail and some bike path. And so we just took turns pulling through that whole thing. And then through all of Rambo, we basically just rotated leading. And at that point, it wasn't so much about pacing as it was about like saving the mental energy of navigating and picking lines. And
Sure.
so basically, as soon as someone would like miss a turn or mess up a line, the person behind them would get in the front and start leading. And it was really crazy how much of a difference I could feel my brain having to have space to recover. And at that point, we'd been riding together for like 7 or 8 hours. And so like
Yeah.
we knew each other's riding, or like I could trust them, and be like blindly following them, into like blind turns and like down these blind rollers. And it's pretty wild because going into it, I didn't expect that to make such a big difference, but I think it increased our efficiency hugely by being able to have that mental break. Um, and then of course there's just like the physical element of like you all have highs and lows at different times. And so someone's always riding the strongest
Yeah.
and then someone's always having the hardest time. And like sharing that helps just like move the whole
A
group
hundred
together
percent. A
faster.
100%.
And we'd even be like, hey, like, are you eating and drinking? Or like, and just making sure that we're like taking care of ourselves still.
Yeah. So at what point do you realize like it's time to go and I'm gonna get away here? Or did it just happen naturally?
So there's definitely a point where like after once we started Ramba and we're still seem to all be riding the same pace, I was like, wow, maybe we're holding hands crossing the finish line. Like, does that work? Are we allowed to do that? But like
Sure.
it's a gun time, it's not a mat time. Like I think that we could just all tie.
Yeah.
I was like, that'd be really cool. But somewhere in Ramba, we didn't know this at the time, but Julie had missed a feed, and so she had gotten some food and water from my and Syd's cruise, but I think she was low. And so which then explained like she was starting to drift back. And then when she did see her mom again at the next stop, she did fully stop. And I just assumed that if she would catch back on, because that's just how it had been happening, we'd go through an aid and like do our things and then like regroup naturally.
Yeah.
But we just ended up not seeing Julie again. And it was at the point where we were like 9 hours in or so, and I was like, well, this is a point where like you either like if you're behind on nutrition or got behind in nutrition the last couple hours, like it is going to be really hard to maintain this pace we're going.
Yes.
And so, um, and she'd also had like a really full season coming into that. And so I think once we realized that like we weren't regrouping with Julie, I was like, well, I guess that's just like part of this right now. So then Sid and I went through the last Jackson Park aid station, and we're like well ahead of what I was thinking we needed to be at in order to finish. I think we had like 3.5 hours, and I thought we needed like, or maybe we had 3 hours and 45 minutes, and I thought we needed 3 hours and 15 to 3.5 hours. So I thought we were doing great. I told Sid that. Um, and we started up. the first climb, which is one of the longer ones on that section. And Syd was like, "Oh, I'm cramping." And I was like, "Okay, well, just stay on my wheel. Like, keep eating and drinking. Do you need anything?" And she's like, "No, I think I'm just feeling it." And then she was like, "And don't wait for me." And I was like, "Okay, well, like, I want us to keep staying together because this is still really hard riding."
Yeah.
And she seemed to be like managing the cramps well. And so it would like ever so slightly drift apart on the climbs. And then she'd catch back on at the top and we'd descend together. And then that just kept kind of happening. And I think eventually, like, maybe that just snapped a little bit much as she was like continuing to manage cramps. It's really hard terrain to manage cramps.
Yes.
I like could not believe it. It was like, oh God, okay. I hope that but I also was like, okay, Syd is going to finish in under 12 hours. Like I know this. Like as long as she keeps moving forward and she can slow down quite a bit at this point if she needs to, like I know she's gonna do this. And so knowing that and her like verbalizing like I don't want you to wait for me and there it being so close to the end at that point, I was like, this feels like a natural time for us to ride our own rides. And like we have worked together to get to this point where we're both achieving this goal and barring any like unforeseen mechanical things at
Yeah.
this point. Like I think we were both at the point where you can fully stop eating and drinking and you're going to make it to the finish line in under 12 hours.
Yes. Yes.
And so that just gave me this like feeling of like, wow, that's so amazing. I hope Julie's still on that pace. We had no idea where Kristy was at that point. And so I was just able to ride that last like hour, just kind of riding the high of that experience. And I also my legs did feel really incredible.
Yeah.
And so it was just really fun to be able to be like, wow, I feel like I have magic legs and like it's one of the best feelings in ultras where you like feel like you could are like invincible.
Yep.
Um, and so yeah, that carried me to the finish. And as soon as I crossed the finish line, like I turned around and was like, Syd's gonna be here any minute. Like I know she will. I'd seen her even like through the course at one point, so
Mm-hmm.
I knew she was close. And then we heard that Kristy was also on pace to finish, and I was like, I think my jaw hit the pavement. Like
Yeah.
I shouldn't have been surprised, but because she was on a single speed and not and by herself, like
Yeah.
without the work and the help of other
Yes.
people, it just blew my mind.
Yes.
And knowing that she's been trying for so long, lives in that community, like, I mean, it was such an incredible emotional feeling to have for someone else, who like
Yeah.
I had only met for the first time ever the day before.
Sure. Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like, yeah, it was really special. And the thing that like really put just like a hard note on it was learning that like Julie had crashed really close to the finish. She was with Kristy, also still on buckle pace after not being with us anymore. And it was just came down to this like really unfortunate crash in the only slick spot of the course that
Yeah.
led to just like her hip bleeding for over an hour.
Yeah.
So that was like the devastating part because I think like I've never raced on the road, but what I can now relate to is just this feeling of people giving something
Mm-hmm.
for this collective goal.
Yes.
And the fact, and I don't think any one of us ever dreamed of all four of us getting a buckle, but knowing that all four of us could have,
Yeah.
and that Julie gave so much for like 10 hours to making that possible, was really special and made it really bittersweet that she didn't
Yeah.
wasn't a part of that ultimate
Yeah.
victory.
So what did this, I mean, I know there's pictures of you holding the belt buckle, smiling a lot, but what did this actually mean to you personally? And you don't have to speak for the other women who accomplished this, but for you personally, what did this mean to check this off and show it can be done?
Um, I think with it being in the context of like, I guess 8 years since Danny first reached out,
Yeah.
um, it just being really. special to get to have that be a part of that experience this year because that was going to happen regardless of if I was
Yep.
there.
Yep.
And it was really special to get to be a part of it this year in the way that was like this collaborative effort with other women. Um, because it's easy to go into a race like that and be like, oh, well, like I know these other guys who are strong. I'll just try to stick with them. Like that is a very common experience or like more common experience, I think, in ultra racing because there are so many more men. And so that was the longest I'd ever ridden with another woman in a race. And the fact that there were two of them that I was with for that long
Yeah.
was so cool. Like it was, and it's just such a different experience. Um, in ways that I like can't necessarily even describe. And
Sure.
so that just made the day really special. Like, I mean, even outside of bike races, like I can't even think of very many days I've spent just 9 or 10 or 11 hours continuously riding with other women. Like maybe on some bikepacking trips, but it's like it's such a few and far in between opportunity. And so that was a very special experience. And then I think the thing that made it happening now versus like in 2021 or earlier make it feel special was just that like it's now been years of strong women going after this.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's been challenged over and over again, including by all of us. And I know that there's been chatter and pressure on Todd and Danny to like make the goal easier, whether it's a
Hmm.
shorter course or a
Yes.
higher time. And I mean, there are times where like when I saw like seeing Britt Mason's time and seeing Syd's time last year, like I doubted it too, being like, I don't know. Like it's definitely not like a course that it suits my strengths. And so I don't know what women can do this or what it will take. And so to actually overcome that doubt that was like pretty collective or at least uncertainty to realize what that would actually look like was really special experience because ultimately like in all races for me one of the things that's the most compelling and like most motivating um you know reasons to be out there is to see what's possible. And
Yes.
this year like did not have prioritized training for Margie in the way that I thought I needed to, but I went into it with a mindset of like, well, I want to see what's possible and by this group.
Yes.
And if I can serve this goal with like my strengths, um, that would be an amazing thing to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have trouble, and you said like this definitely wasn't the big target on the wall you're getting at, but do you struggle at all with when you have a big achievement like this or hit a big goal? What's what's next? Or what are you moving on? Do you
Sometimes, yeah, I think this can be really common after big things, regardless of if they're like a result or an
Yeah,
event, like big
100%.
trips also, where you like come off the high of it. And the easiest way to avoid the like low that often comes after that, like post trip blues or post like event blues, or is to like find the next one.
Yeah.
And so I came home from Margie and I was so fired up and I was so excited and was just like, this is amazing. And I'd had a really good race at the Vapor Trail as well. And so I felt like I was on this roll. And really for the first time, it felt like I have found what feels like me kind of thriving in ultra races
Sure.
again, but in a different way than before, I don't know if that makes sense. Like both Margie and Vapor Trail, I got to race with the feelings that I want to race with. Like I was really happy, I was really present. I wasn't I was grounded, like
Yeah.
more than
Yeah.
confident, just grounded,
Yeah.
like not attached to my own personal outcome. Um, and those feelings, like to have that, like to be essentially in like a flow state of sorts
Yeah.
for a full day is like such an addicting feeling. Like it's what we're seeking. And so to
Yeah.
have that happen just 2 weeks apart was really exciting to me. And so I immediately found myself being like, I want to go time trial Kokapelli because I'm on a roll. And I also was like, am very drawn to like the aesthetics. This is like the really being inspired by landscape. And so the aesthetics of like racing at high altitude in the Colorado Rockies and then racing in the hardwood forests of the UP and then like
Yeah.
the desert in Kokapelli, I just thought would be this really cool trifecta. But my body, I got sick within a couple of days of getting home
Of
from
course.
Margie,
Yeah, of
of
course.
course, yeah. And then I got sick again. Like and then I pretty quickly just realized like I've had a really big year, even just like outside of bike racing.
Yeah.
And my body was telling me it needed a break. And not even just like a physical break, but like I needed some space to just like really decompress
Yeah.
from what has been a lot of accumulated stress. And
Sure.
so and for me, I was lucky enough to have known like to take an opportunity to like really step away from the bike and just all work and life. And I went on a river trip with my husband for a week,
Yeah.
and that helped a lot, just like having that
Sure.
clarity. And then also getting a break from just the internet and the cell phone. Like it's really, really special. And like I'm so grateful for all the response that we got from Margie, but it's also a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
it's easy for to get caught up in that.
Yeah.
And then I think that starts to like almost perpetuate the like decline afterwards,
Yeah.
and so that week on the river, just like camping and not having cell service was really good for my nervous system and helped me come out of that and be like, okay, Margie was awesome. I will never forget that day, and I'm going to now proceed on to the rest of my fall and my off season and be like really happy with uh what we did and like how I ended that
Yeah.
little stint of bike racing.
That's beautiful. All of it. We uh we always finish things up here, Kate, with what are called I guess the random fire questions. They're not really rapid, but they're kind of all over the place and they're more fun.
Yeah.
Now that we've talked out all the serious stuff and cried a little bit and like
Yeah.
done all the feels that normally happen on this show. So,
Hmm.
my first question, I feel like you could possibly be like a connoisseur in this field, and that is if you're going out on a super long ride and you end up having to stop at a gas station, what are you stopping to get you home to eat and drink?
Like, am I bonking?
Well, it can be whatever you want.
Okay. Um, the that is a good question. I think generally ice cream, and a Mexican Coke if available.
Those are fantastic answers, and we will accept them and agree. Um, I am thinking that you probably don't listen to music on the bike very much, just from other interviews I've heard with you, and you like to really be present in nature. Is that correct?
It is, yes, that is correct. But there's also like this other reason, in that I grew up I started ultra racing in the world where like it was harder to charge things.
Oh, sure.
And like you had like
Yeah.
iPods. That's what they
Yes.
were. Yeah, not
Yes.
phones. Like I didn't have a smartphone until
Yep.
2017.
Good for
So the
you.
like the
Yes.
logistics of music were hard at first, and so that's how I learned. Like I just didn't rely on it. But then I also have this thing where like even now I like have one headphone in and I can't. I feel like my awareness of my
Yeah.
surroundings and my own self is really off when I can have something in my ear.
Sure.
And so I can ride on gravel or roads with one pod in, and that does help in ultras because
Okay.
I don't find roads as engaging. But I
Sure.
can't mountain bike with anything in my ears.
Yeah.
Like I think my balance is off.
So when you have this one ear pod
Yeah.
in, what are we listening to? Do we have music on, or is this a podcast, or what are we doing?
Some music, prefer
What's on the Kait Boyle Spotify pot or hot mix?
that's a little embarrassing in part because I mostly just rely on what Will chooses and then I'm like,
Ah,
can I just have your playlist? Like I don't really care. Like
yeah,
I love country music. I love like Fleetwood Mac. I also love like Sabrina Carpenter right now. But like I'm
sure.
not gonna yeah. So it just kind of I don't know, maybe my time management should be better and I should put more time into choosing music, but
No, it's
podcasts as
okay.
well. Yeah.
It's okay. I know that you're the third or fourth guest who just listens to whatever their wife or child puts on the device.
Yeah.
So then
Well,
the
like,
real yeah, the real question I think listeners would want to know. You mentioned Unbound earlier, and we have had
yeah.
a kind of a running joke that if we had a karaoke night at Unbound, what would you show up and sing if you could only sing one song?
Oh man, that is a really, really good question. Okay, well, this is a little embarrassing, but I'll just say the last song that I actually was singing out loud and dancing around to, which was the night I got home from Margie, and I was dancing with my dog, Hank, who was kind of into it, and it was Shania Twain. And
Fantastic.
it's the song that I used for the reel that I made about Margie, which is
Yeah.
like man, I feel like a woman's Shania Twain song, which is just I thought was hilarious.
Yes. Well, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a very famous tire testing expert who's going to be on the pod. It's already recorded, but he'll come out in like a month and he might name the same song you just
Really?
did. Yeah.
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah. So
That'd
you could
bring me
sing a
back to
duet.
Unbound.
Yeah, you could
Yeah,
sing a duet at Unbound with him. So,
totally.
all right. Uh one question that the listeners and viewers always want to know. Are you into Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
Oh, um, I'm probably more familiar, more of a Harry Potter, except that I'd actually rather go to where Lord of the Rings was filmed.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
but I was just in DC and went on the like Capitol subway where you get like escorted um into the Capitol.
Yep.
And it felt like Hogwarts.
Sure.
And I found myself being like, wow, this is crazy. This feels just like Hogwarts. Except for like going to the senator's office.
Sure. Yes. Well, then the next question, when you answer Harry Potter, it becomes a and question, and that is,
Mm.
what if you were to go to Hogwarts and the Sorting Hat sorted you, which house do you believe you would be a part of?
Oh God. Well, now I'm not apparently not good of enough of a Hogwarts fan because I don't remember the names of them
Oh,
all.
it's okay.
Yeah.
You definitely have some Gryffindor vibes, which are
Okay.
good if you're
Okay.
into that. So it's all
Yeah, I
good.
really don't like snakes, so
Yeah.
I
Well,
shouldn't be associated with snakes.
yeah, it's okay. Uh, so I am through my work supported by Wahoo. So I just call this the Wahoo question. But if you don't use a Wahoo as your computer, you are free to name whatever you have when I'm done with this. But when
Mhm.
you are racing or when you're
Mhm.
riding, what is your main screen that you like to have on your computer on your bike?
Oh yeah, that's easy. I use a Chorus Dura and I race with a map. I race with it in split screen, so I always have a map on the top part of the screen, and then I have um time and power,
Okay,
and that comes down to the pacing and remembering when to eat.
sure. That makes sense. Okay. Uh, you have raced and traveled to a lot of places. Uh,
Mhm.
if you could say, this is kind of a two-parter, like where have you been that you are just like everybody needs to go there either to race or to
Mhm.
just see this place? And then the second part of the question is, where have you not gotten to go yet where you're just like, I am here for that?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I have had a fascination with bikepacking in the Alps for a long time. Like, I think that while we have a lot of undeveloped open space in the American West, which is cherished, I don't ever want to lose. The
Yeah.
thing that is captivating to me about the Alps is how long humans have been living and building trails there that now you can ride mountain bikes on. And there are things like a ton of mountain huts and places that you can get espresso and great bread and cheese.
Yes.
And so while it's like very much the riding opportunity is influenced by like centuries of human occupants and stewardship, for lack of a better word, and
Yeah.
development, like
Yeah.
it's also just unreal to me like how much connectivity there is. Like you can go anywhere and most of it is open to bikes. And then more close to home, I have never been to British Columbia or really
Mm,
Canada for that matter. Like
sure.
I've only been to Montreal. Um, and I would love to go ride in BC.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It seems
which
like
I
you
need to
could
do.
explore there for years and not touch nearly
Totally.
even 10% of it.
Yeah.
All righty. My last question, and again, like I just apologize. This might bring more emotion out, but
Mm.
I do like to ask people who their biggest inspiration is. And you've mentioned a lot about different times in your life where people just believed or they gave you belief in
Mhm.
something being possible. And so I'm always curious who your biggest inspiration is or has been and why.
Oh man. Um, well, first, you don't ever have to apologize for bringing up emotion. Um, well, I think I don't know if this is probably not necessarily the right answer, but like I can think of countless people who have given me examples of what is possible and like what a really inspiring way to approach life can look like
Sure.
is. And that is everything from, or these are people from like people that I learned to ride horses from to one of my early track coaches. That was the first time I'd ever heard of like ultra running, ultra
Sure.
anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
To like some female mountain guides who were instructors in college. Um, to like a lot of different students I had and co-instructors, to my husband, to women like Lael and Rebecca Rush and
Yeah.
Esther Harini, who all
Yeah.
like showed me what was possible and like raised the bar, to inspire me to reach. Like friends like Kurt, who kind of like were endless sources of belief.
Hmm.
And so
Yes.
I don't have necessarily one person,
Yeah.
but I think that like I do think that there's so much value in like being able to connect with all different people who just continue to expand what you think your life could be like and like what you think you could contribute to the world and just kind of like the kind of person you want to be.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. And it's okay that you don't have just one. That's all right. So, Kate, this has been awesome. And just thank you for taking the time, first of all, and then just the transparency and the stories you shared today.
Thanks, JP. Thanks so much for the meaningful conversation. That's really nice to get.
Thanks for hanging out with Kate and me today. Do me a favor, and if you enjoyed this conversation or you found it meaningful, please share it with someone that you know will enjoy it as well. Coming up next week on the pod is photographer Brett Rothmeyer, and you might know him best as the guy who takes all the amazing pictures of Keegan Swenson, and he's got some good stories in that one coming up, so don't miss out on that. I do hope you have an amazing day. I hope you are finding time outside to move and enjoy nature, and more than anything, I hope you remember that you are loved.